Now, that actually brings us around to the fourth part of this procedure. And in those cases where the body has become really toxic, for example, with AIDS or cancer, the experiment, now keep in mind, neither one of us are doctors here, so we cannot prescribe, we cannot diagnose, we can only say, we've tried it, you can do the experiment too. But in any case, experimenters that have done this, they find that in severe cases of toxicity, that there's actually a fourth modality that does help in those cases, although it's generally useful to do this anyway, and that is to use what is called the ozonator here, which creates ice-cold ozonated water. And actually what you do is you take a glass of water, you put some ice cubes in it. This one's already melted in the hot lights here. You put in this air stone here. This unit plugs in. You turn it on. And you can see that there's this stream of bubbles of air that are going in through this water here. And that's not just air. That's ozonated air. Ozonated air is electrically been changed so that it does creates a very vibrant form of oxygen. And you leave that in there 5-10 minutes, being careful not to breathe it, so I'm going to turn it off here so I don't gas ourselves out here. But after 5 or 10 minutes, this will then have a very rich amount of oxygen in it. And once it has a very rich amount of oxygen, you can taste it. It'll taste like and smell like air after a good thunderstorm. It'll have a very clean, fresh smell to it. And you can drink this. I'm going to be drinking a lot here, it seems like. But that's part of the process, is you do want to flush those toxins out. You can drink that. That then goes into the stomach, which has a very rugged lining. Now, the reason we don't breathe for this is because our lungs are not designed, they're too sensitive for ozone, but our stomach lining is designed for caustic acids and such. And so when we drink this, the oxygen, the highly electrified oxygen, is absorbed through the stomach lining, and you can show this medically by using an oxygen sensor. If you've ever gone to the hospital and been put under, they put an oxygen sensor to make sure you're not suffocating while you're under, because you can't scream out and say, hey, I'm suffocating. But anyway, they'll measure that oxygen. You can use that sensor to show that the oxygen in the body, in the blood, goes to 100%, and it stays there for a few minutes to about half an hour. And this does have to be made fresh because electrically it only lasts about 15 minutes before it starts to dissipate out of the water. And so it'll oxygenate the body fully. And the body has been designed when there was more oxygen in the air, such as biblical times. They've taken air that's been locked up in ice or in other places and measured it. And at one time there was much more oxygen in air, which meant that we had a much easier time because as higher life forms we need oxygen. And the bacteria and virus and fungi, they don't need oxygen. In fact, oxygen is deadly to them. They just didn't have, they have a much easier time now because there is no longer as much oxygen around in our bodies and elsewhere. So these toxins then get burned up much more easily, the bacteria, virus, and fungi that have been stunned because of the oxygen. A lot of people also find that because for the first time in a long time their body's getting enough oxygen, that they just feel good, they feel alive, they feel vibrant, they feel for the first time like really God meant them to feel. So they just drink it because it makes them feel good. In fact, in Japan, I understand, you can now go to an oxygen bar and breathe oxygen just to feel good. Well, this is a lot less expensive and a lot cheaper than flying to Tokyo and going to an oxygen bar.
I have a testimony.
Yes.
About this ozonator, the ozone water. Remember when, there's sometimes, I'm a coffee drinker, okay, I confess, I've confessed my sin before you, okay, and sometimes I don't want to wait. and I go ahead and drink my coffee, and then I do the blood purification, and yes, it does multiply that strength of that caffeine in my body, and I feel like I've had more than I needed, which is all I need. Just 1 cup does it all now. So what I do, if I ever forget, oh my gosh, I forgot, I'll go in there and make me a glass of ozonated water, and I'm not kidding you one bit. You'll find it to be true. Within 30 seconds to 1 minute, my caffeine, that nervousness, is completely gone.